Hi, I'm Nathan Oakley, and I'm hoping this video will present as sort of me gathering my thoughts on the current state of play in Flat Earth. As a few people have said to me that they think my exposure of the pseudoscience being punted on globebusters is divisive, or in some way directed personally at an individual, or maybe some, back-end feud that I've had with somebody on that show, namely Bob. So this video will hopefully serve to dispel that, so that people understand that absolutely isn't the case, and then hopefully give an idea of what my thoughts are going forward and sort of where I feel we're at as a result. So I suppose this is an opportunity to say to Bob directly. So I haven't got communication with Bob in a great way, but Bob, if you've taken offence to what I've said, I am sorry. So this is not my intention. My hope would be that the current gaggle of people that are watching Netflix and saying Bob's got proof of Earth spinning with science can understand that that's not actually the case. So the downside to this is that it kind of exposes the state of play we have within Flat Earth at the moment, which is that we've reached a crossroads or a fork in the road, and on one side of the fork we've got a path that's similar to the current rhetoric, where we can apply the current used principles of science and come up with just so stories based on pseudoscience and technology. And that's essentially the same as what we have now already, and I really want to move I really want to move past that. So my intention is to sort of get to the other side of the crossroads, which isn't as much as a pleasant road to travel. So the one side, as I say, is very similar to the current rhetoric, where we've got pseudoscience applications and no true scientific discovery, but priesthoods and rhetoric. Well, the slightly less trodden path is the one where we have a more of an acceptance that we don't know much. We haven't gotten a new just so story for the vacuum of the sky or the ether or whatever CERN wants to declare God is. Instead we go on a path where we accept that we don't know very much at all. So in thinking about this, it kind of came to my attention that the Globebusters team, big that they are in the scheme of things, are under a lot of pressure to actually provide some of the answers to the questions that are being asked about our world. So several people have got in touch with me, including Nick and Patricia, and said, this is dividing the community. And at first I was annoyed. It's like, this isn't my intention. My intention is to show people the divide in the road as I'm now describing it, which, so in other words, these people are correct. But the path less trodden, as I say, is an acceptance of how limited our understanding is. We haven't got answers for people. So that means that the road less travelled will be full of people getting angry for you being on that road and declaring you're on that road without having answers and without being able to give some sort of explanations for the questions that people are left with after the fact. Now, unfortunately, the exposure of the original deception, the globe lie, does leave people where they want to maybe join a group and have some of this discovery done for them. And that will be taken up by people like the Globebusters team. They're wanting and working very hard to try and answer questions that people have. And for that, I've got nothing but respect, dutifully given. But by having a disaster on that road, and the Netflix documentary claiming scientific proof of Earth spin is, in my opinion, that very disaster, and becomes a useful opportunity for us to actually say, well, what is proof? What is science? And when you go down that road, you realise that very little of what you're told, 99.9% of what's claimed to be science, isn't. And when you're on that road, you're going to be chucked. You're going to have stones thrown at you for not being able to give the kind of answers that Globebusters are trying to give. So in terms of their attempts to provide some answers, that needs kudos. But I think moving forward, we do need to recognise what is and isn't proof, and how limited our actual understandings of the world are. So I'm hoping that we can actually move forward in time on the path less trodden, with a bit of unity. You know, abandon the pseudoscience, abandon the rhetoric, and not just form a new priesthood. That's kind of my hope. So the positive comments that I've had from people who've got in touch with me, again, some of them larger names within the flat Earth community, have pointed out that the eggs have been cracked, the omelet's on the go, and people are starting to recognise the main point, which is to say that to punt just so stories and rhetoric based on gadgets is to continue on a path that's no different to things like CERN, just so stories attached to phenomena conjured within apparatus, and that leads you to men in white coats telling you what God is. So I don't want to be on that road where I'm offering up a potentially debunkable method of extracting a conclusion and telling people what God is, or telling them what the sky is, telling them what heaven is. I'd hope that acceptance that we have a very limited understanding is the first step on the road to truth. So how else to summarise this? I feel that the end result of this situation with Netflix behind the curve is potentially resolvable for the people involved. So the Globebusters team, or Bob specifically, as he's unfortunately for him, the face of the quoted experiment. Squeeze my face. So I'd hope that, albeit tentatively, the acceptance of my points in regards to the hijacking of science will eventually lead us down a path of truth and down a path of understanding where the current rhetoric is indeed deceitful. But moreover, we don't fall into the trap of trying to present similar just so stories to the just so stories given to us for the globe. What else was I going to talk about? Maps and projections. So I had a chat with Nick Fouquet-Word just before making this video, and he was asking my opinion on the azimuthal equidistant model or flat Earth model, and what I thought about it, where it was good, where it wasn't. So I think I'll probably end this video just by summarising that, and then maybe again one more time point out where I'm coming from in regards to science, and indeed hopefully draw some conclusions to the situation with the Globebusters team. So the map, the azimuthal equidistant projection, is exactly that, a global projection. And one of the first things I looked at with Martin Liebke, otherwise known as Flat Earth British, when I first came to this subject, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was to look at the current models to see which ones work. And if you're to take a flat world, wrap it around a sphere, and have that sphere be your starting point to project all maps out from there, you'll end up with a situation where the map projections get worse when they come off the sphere. And if you're ever to compare the two models, you'll end up in a position where the original conversion from a flat world onto a sphere will work better than that sphere projected back onto a flat map. So you'll always have a winner if you're comparing models. So that's the negative of that. We don't live on a model, the map is not the terrain. We live on a flat world, it presents as flat and motionless. The Earth is obviously and observably flat. So the map is not the terrain, and neither are where we live, globe or projection, but I feel that it's been orchestrated in such a way that the flat projections, the maps, will work in the way that the projection is designed to work, same as it does with the azimuthal equidistant projection working correctly if you use it from centre out. But they'll never work as well as a complete representation of the entirety of the land masses when you compare them to the original conversion from flat world to spherical model. So that means that if you have a battle of the models, the globe model will win. We don't live on a model. The fact that they, being the map makers, have converted our flat world on a model that is spherical and then projected out from there onto flat maps doesn't mean that the flat maps are not the world, even though they're not a correct representation of the actual land masses and where they lay originally, because they work in the way the spherical projection is designed to work, which means you're always being led back to, well, it must be a sphere. Well, unfortunately not. So that's the maps and models. The positive things to say about them is that it's a great tool. You can use an azimuthal equidistant projection to show somebody who's thoroughly indoctrinated how you could perceive a flat layout of continents to work. and you can show your planes going around them with circumnavigation, and you can give people some of the ideas and shatter some of the illusions, even though it's not an accurate depiction of our world. So it is a useful tool, but when we get to the stage that we're reifying models, and this has happened on the debate with Anthony, where we've ended up arguing about the ice wall, and there's going to be people who've heard me say those two words and go, oh yeah, ice wall, yeah. What ice wall? What, you mean the one that's on that model? What ice wall? What, this picture of some ice? Ice wall? Oh, what, the one that they detailed in some diary? Cook's diary? Oh, that ice wall, the one that Cook told us about. All right, okay, so we've got an ice wall then. No, but there we go, we can reify that model all we like. No different to the globe. But it's a spherical projection leading you back to the belief that you're on a globe, as has been orchestrated in this deception. So that's the maps, and that's probably where I'll leave that subject. But I will summarise again my desires and hopes for going on Globebusters, and again say that it is absolutely in no way any personal attack on any individual when I do this. As a community, as a population, we have been deceived into belief that pseudoscience, models and discounting of correlations gives you proof, and then declaration based on observation is all you need in the name of science to convince people of proof, and this is absolutely not the case. Real empirical proof comes from an adherence to the scientific method, and that's why it's used as a magic word to make people believe what men say is proven when it's not. So that's the main point. Now, that being the case, and having a reasonable understanding of the scientific methodology that would need to be applied in the case of things like gyroscopes or CERN or any other piece of technology held up with a just so story to tell you about how your world works, or what God is, or what the vacuum of the sky is, or what the ether is, those methodologies can be easily pulled apart when the actual method of science is applied, and in most instances it has not been applied. So that's my intention, to get that clear to anybody involved. And on the positive side, to Bob and the team who have found themselves in the situation they are with people watching daily, that Bob has proven scientifically that the Earth spins on Netflix. Well, for those people, you can realise that this is a way out. You know, this is an opportunity to say, I got it wrong. Yes, it will require a degree of humility, and that isn't something I'm pushing for because I want to see people have some humility. It's just a necessary outcome if you are to concede that something presented as scientifically proven is in fact not scientifically valid. And in doing so, anybody who comes along thereafter and says Bob's proved the Earth spins, you'd have to concede that it was absolutely not scientific evidence of Earth spin. The fact that it can be debunked with the necessary ingredients needed for it to prove Earth spin, i.e. 2 frames of reference and a Coriolis effect, is besides the point if we're to move forward on the path less trodden, the path that leads us to truth. But that path, as I say, will be a path with people hurling stones and demanding answers. And the other fork in the road is to continue with the same methodology we currently have from the pseudoscientists, heliocentrism priests, and come up with just so stories based on discounts of likelihoods based on observation and declaration. So that's what I'm hoping to avoid. The path less trodden is definitely not a fun path. It's a path that basically tells you how little you know about the world, and you have to accept that there may not be a priest at the end of that path to tell you, having done all of the experiments necessary to work out what the world is. So hopefully this will enlighten people to accept that there is very little we know about the world. I don't know why the sky is blue, but I do know that it's not a vacuum, and I will smash that to pieces. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.